Thank you to my colleagues for allowing me to do this today and for changing the schedule. I've got Dr. Moez Lemium, who's the dean of the Mumma College of Business at USF, and he helped supervise this and help make sure the numbers are correct and to put together the intellectual framework. And he's also been advising the Tampa Bay Partnership and other groups. This is different than the Tampa Bay Partnership's presentation because theirs is regional and this one is city-only. To our knowledge, it's the first time anybody's looked at city-only data. And remember, this is the second time we've discussed this. A year ago, you all allowed me to present it then as well. I've also got on the line Alex Freya, who was Councilmember Citro's intern a year ago, and he graciously allowed Alex to help me. Alex was a USF economics student at USF, and now he's at UNC Charlotte. So thank you to Alex. Alex is the one who actually put together all the slides and the data, so if we have any questions about that, we can do that. As we said before, what gets measured gets done. If you look at the capital markets with companies, because companies have to meet certain SEC guidelines on data, there's a free flow of information for the most part, and companies know what to look for and how to measure. With cities, it's not as clear, and cities often measure their internal results, like what is the speed of the fire trucks in response, what's the speed of the police cars, what is the response time on garbage collection, and all those internal metrics are important. Those are outputs. This is outcome. What are the big success stories of cities? So we looked at, part of our process was that we looked at the best cities in the world, and we thought about how are they measured, and I'll get back to that in a second. But the first thing is that when we look at numbers that Tampa has used before, there are a lot of what we call vanity rankings. And these are rankings by magazines nationally that will rank something, and they do it for the purpose of getting publicity. But if you look at the data underlying them, and my legislative aides have called them, all that data is regional. None of it is local. So if it says Tampa is number one among the millennials or Tampa is number one, it's talking about regional data, not just Tampa. So we researched how the best cities in the world measure themselves and looked at the data sets that the best economists in the world use to measure cities. And we created a short list. Chief Bennett says for measurement, the city has hundreds of data points that he's measuring. But just for this, we need to create a simple scorecard so that we can look at what are the key measures that people use. We consulted not only USF, but also UF and economists from the Florida Chamber Foundation and also Florida Tax Watch. These are the simple criteria that we came up with that are the main criteria other cities use to measure their economic performance. And again, this is not looking at the overall performance of the city. It's just looking at economic performance. You all know that each of us has our own interests and expertise. My interest is economic development. And so I think it's important to make sure that we have the right data. So I'll jump into the data. Per capita income, which is the main economic measure that cities and countries use, here is the track. And you saw all of this a year ago. The new data is 2019, and that's the latest data. This data comes from the U.S. Census Bureau. It's not made up from some other source. It's easily accessible from the census. But what we did, again, is we looked at the city limits of Tampa only, not the region. And what it shows is a couple things. Number one is per capita income. Tampa was tracking pretty high for most of the last decade. And we go back to a decade because that's typically how economists measure, but also the Great Recession ended in 2009, and so it looks at the picture after that. But the kind of shocking thing, the different thing that happened is Tampa's trajectory is kind of flat as compared to the other cities. And what's happened is if you look in the last 2 or 3 years before this, St. Petersburg's trajectory was really high. And a lot of people in Tampa think that St. Petersburg's economy must be secondary to Tampa. What this shows is that St. Petersburg's per capita income surpassed Tampa's for the first time that anybody remembers. One of the reasons why Tampa's number is high and artificially high is that we have a higher percentage of people earning more than $200,000 a year. And so if you look at this number, we have the highest number among our peer sets. We looked at Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, St. Petersburg, Fort Lauderdale as some of the largest cities in Florida. And you can look at all of them, all the cities in the country if you want. There are some smaller cities that have bigger or smaller numbers, but we just looked at kind of our peer set. But what it shows is that because we have such a high number of high earners, it changes our numbers. If we took those out or if we made it more equal with the other cities, our per capita income will be much lower than it is right now. Median household income, this is where you look at the whole gap and you pick the number in the middle. And it's also looking at at households, not just at individuals. But what this shows is that among our peer set in Florida, we're fourth. So we're not down where Miami is, but we're also not the star either. Look at per capita income compared to benchmark cities. And you could compare us to a lot of cities, but around chamber and economic development groups, they kind of arbitrarily talk about Charlotte, Austin, Atlanta. Tampa Bay Partnership goes into much greater detail looking at other regions. But we looked at other kind of benchmark cities that people often compare Tampa to. And what you see here is on per capita income, and again, the main measure of economic performance, Tampa's not only distant fourth, we didn't catch up with them, but our trajectory is not the same. Our trajectory is kind of the same as Charlotte, but you see Atlanta and Austin, their trajectory is much, much higher. So that means that we need to do something to make sure that our trajectory is higher, because first of all, we're never going to catch up with our benchmark cities, and we may not even catch up with our peer cities. Median household income compared to benchmark cities, not surprisingly from the last graph, we come in fourth. Income disparity, which is a really important thing that people asked about last time. If you look, just an example, St. Petersburg's income disparity, this is between male and female. In St. Petersburg, it's 5,000. And when I mention that at speeches, people gasp. But Tampa's is 9,000. We're much, much worse. And we need to think about that as in terms of policy solutions and economic development solutions to try to change that gap. Another one that folks asked about last time was African American versus Caucasian. And you see in St. Petersburg, it's the difference in pay, annual difference in pay is $17,000 a year. But in Tampa, it's 21. And it shows that even in our other peer cities, that the disparity, for the most part, is not as great as it is in Tampa. And we feel that. We hear it in public comment. But quantitatively looking at census data, it shows there. Then you look at the middle class, and the kind of shocking thing here is that for most of, remember the Great Recession ended in 2009, for most of the last decade, the middle class in Tampa shrank. And then it popped up in 2018, 2019, but still the middle class is not high compared to other cities. And so we know economically that if we want to improve our numbers, we have to increase the middle class, and we have to bring people into the middle class. Also, sadly, we want to be on the other side of this graph. Unfortunately, we have the second highest poverty rate among our peer cities in Florida. Lucky for us, Miami is really bad, but compared to all of our peer cities, look, St. Petersburg, again, this is 2019 numbers, St. Petersburg is about 15%, and we're almost 19%. Percentage of population living, this is against our benchmark cities, and it shows Atlanta is worse than we are, but compared to Austin and Charlotte, which are cities we aspire to be very often, ours is much worse. Florida unemployment rates, and again, this is 2019 data, but ours was second worst. Think about, we took office in May 2019, so there was already inertia and trajectory for 2019. 2020 is going to be a horrible year because of COVID, so those numbers will be off. But the reason why we need to look at these numbers is because 2021 and 2022 are on us. We need to make sure we have the right tools in place and the right processes to make sure that we change the trajectory of these numbers. Home ownership rate, which is a sign of a lot of things in the health of a community. Look, the state average is about 65%, I think. Singapore, I put in there because I used to live in Singapore. We can't copy their model, but they're 92%. But ours is tracking toward the bottom in home ownership rate, and we know that we need to increase that. As an example, St. Petersburg's is about 58%, and ours is 48%. African American home ownership rate is even lower at around 31%. That was a question that folks asked last year. Violent crime rate, we have one of the lowest violent crime rates in the state. And what I say is that the same policy-oriented people that led making our violent crime rate low, that's Mayor Castor and John Bennett, they're the same people looking at helping to solve these other issues. And so the good news for everybody watching is that we have a team of policy people who are trying to solve these issues. Tampa does very well in terms of percentage of people with a bachelor's degree among our peer cities. We don't do quite as well compared to our benchmark cities. Something, again, we can work on partnering with USF and others. Dr. Lemian lets me use this quote of him: the companies and people we want to attract go beyond the rankings and the rhetoric. They look at the facts, and they know the facts better than we do. The bottom line is that the poverty issues and these other issues are not just a social issue, they're an economic development issue. Because you think about Sykes Enterprises, for example, John Sykes didn't go through the regular economic development channels. He came to Tampa, walked around, and decided he liked the city, and moved what's now a multi-billion-dollar company here. And there are many companies like that. But no matter how much marketing we do about the vanity rankings and the positive rankings, we've got to face these numbers and we've got to address them, because if not, these numbers are easily Googled. The people that want to move here are going to, or our kids who want to try to stay here, they're going to Google the numbers and see that our numbers are not where they should be. So we need to make sure that if the system is broken, if economic development did not work in the last 10 years, if these policies did not work, we're in almost all of our numbers in the wrong trajectory, that means that we need to refocus them. We need to reinvent them. We need to break the old processes and create new ones. And we need to focus on reducing poverty and increasing the middle class. We need to use an honest scorecard. When I went with the Tampa Chamber to Charlotte a couple years ago, somebody asked the Charlotte Foundation, why did you all succeed? And the guy said, about 10, 15 years ago, we looked at our real data, not the data we wanted, and we addressed that. Last slide, we need to use something like the scorecard. We need to define our goals. We need to get community input. We need to do predictive analytics with USF, and then we need a plan. So what happened after this last year is City Council recommended an Economic Advisory Committee. The mayor decided to lead that herself. We set up the processes. USF, Moaz, and his colleagues facilitated. They presented the numbers to the community. The community has 25 folks in the community, some of whom we appointed, have given feedback to the mayor. The mayor's actually presenting that at 11 o'clock this morning. That's why Dr. Lemium has to jump. But the idea here is we're at step number 2. So the community has now given feedback on the types of measures we should use, and the community's given some input into what kinds of solutions we should have. But now we have to go to the next level and really look at this from a policy point of view. So I'll shut up at this point. Thank you.
All right. Are the other speakers on the line going to speak, or they're just standing by?
No, they're just standing by in case you all have questions.
Do you have any questions or comments from council members? Councilman Vieira, yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Carlson, for putting this together and for all of your help, including Dr. Moez, who's a wonderful constituent and a fine gentleman. And just a couple of things to add on there, if I may, that, take a look at our mass transit situation. One of the greatest barriers to breaking poverty and having upward mobility is having a robust mass transit system. And we missed a boat on that apparently in 2018, and God willing we can do it again in 2022. And then another big thing is our public school system, which right now there's a lot in the news about it, and having a public school system that is not only well funded but that has a level of confidence and stability, I think, is so important for a community. And then things that council can do, and I want to point us to initiatives like our the apprenticeship initiative, which I think is something so important that creates upward mobility for folks to go to that solid middle class, for folks who historically have come from vulnerable populations, and doing things like that help people out. But just thank you, Councilman Carlson, for this, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman Good.
Councilman Carlson, thank you for your work. Thank you to your two gentlemen that helped mastermind some of this plan to give to the administration. When I look at the plan, I look at what is still the solution. We talk and talk and talk, but what is the real solution? How do we get our foot on the gas to go to the next level? So for me, when my good colleague, Mr. Vieira, talked about schools. Well, when I have low thriving schools in my community, how do they get to the next level? We tuck away a lot of technical programs, a lot of construction programs in the different schools and communities, jobs that we still have that need people on the workforce. I always said when I first came here, every job that the city of Tampa has, the school district should know about. Because that's going to be your next generation of people trying to get into the workforce. And when you don't have that train moving, this is what we have. So I guess I'm going to wait back and see what the mayor maybe come up with at 11 o'clock and how we can move this train to get those folks at the bottom, start inching them up into that middle section. And I think it's, again, solutionary. So I'm just waiting to hear what those real solutions are. So you have any questions to that, Doctor?
Councilman Carlson. I'm sorry, it's Citro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill, thank you very much for this. you have said, and I believe, if I may paraphrase, that we're on a three-legged stool: real estate, construction, and tourism. And I believe we need to get out of that mindset for more people to be able to have better careers. No offense to my friends at Port Tampa Bay, but I think it's being underused. We need more manufacturing here so that we can put people to work in jobs that don't just last a year or two, as in construction. Now, don't want to see construction stop. No, we're on a good road. But construction comes in, lasts 3-4 years, and then moves somewhere else. We need somewhere where people can have a career, an opportunity to work at a place for 10, 15, 20 years if they so wish. I know the trend is not that way. People stay at places 2 or 3 years, then move on there. But we have to get off the mentality of real estate, construction, tourism. We have a deep water port that needs to be used. Bill, thank you very much for your information here. And we just need to change our logic. As Luis Vieira said, as Councilman Vieira said, we need better transportation. That's one major thing that all these corporations look at when they're looking to move their headquarters. So, again, Councilman Carlson, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. And, I think our biggest success in the last decade or a little bit more is when I graduated USF in 2007, all my friends left that had come down here to go to school because they said the same thing: Tampa does not have what I need. Flip that to 2021, and even a couple years ago, we are a victim of our own success. Everybody wants to come to Tampa, or not everybody, but a lot of people want to come to Tampa. The problem is, it's really not affordable. We don't have a strong middle class. We don't have affordable housing. We see the real estate prices. Home ownership is sometimes unattainable. Rents have gone up tremendously. I've seen rents double since 2010 to now, but I don't see salaries increasing. I don't see people making more money. The cost of living climbs, but earnings aren't climbing to match those. We have a long way to go. You brought up a lot of good points, the reduction in violent crimes, and I thank Mayor Castor, and you mentioned Chief Bennett and everybody that makes that happen in the police department. However, when it comes to cost of living and transportation, the lack thereof, we are significantly behind. I thank everybody who worked on this to put this together. There are people here on the screen, you yourself, Jason Marlowe, who worked in your office before, all his work in this. They all deserve credit because we've never had what you call the Tampa Scorecard. We've never had this kind of analysis, and I'm glad you put the real, raw data out there so we can find real solutions. It's not all rose-colored glasses. Hey, we have a lot of construction going downtown. We have the Riverwalk is doing great, and Armature Works and all these things. Parts of the city are struggling. East Tampa is what I call the land that time forgot. And I'll say it over and over because it's frozen in time. Where's the middle class there? Where's the hand up, not the hand out? We need to look at the city as a whole. You've made a lot of valid points, and I'm glad that you brought this up because this will be the catalyst to inspire and move forward with real goals. And I give you a lot of credit for this. I think this is a very necessary and very important thing that you've put forward. Anybody else? Dingfelder?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carlson, great job putting these together. And I agree with you completely. You have to have a benchmark. You have to have appropriate statistics to see where you are before you can figure out where you're going to go. I am curious, the two gentlemen that you have on the screen, and I guess they helped you put these together. I would love, if they're willing, I'd love to hear what their takeaway is from this and any thoughts or suggestions that either of you have. Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to call on them, I'd love to hear from them.
Sure. If either of the two gentlemen would like to speak.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So again, Moaz Limaim, I'm the Dean of the USF MUMA College of Business, and really grateful for this opportunity to talk this morning. First of all, let me really compliment Councilman Carlson for this work. I cannot tell you how important this work is in first understanding where we are, but also planning for the future. When companies like Amazon and others look for places either to relocate or to expand, they do not look for the vanity ranking. They look for this data, and that's how they make their decisions. So it is up to us to absolutely understand the data, but this is a great first step. I think Councilman Vera hit the nail on the head and said we need to move the needle. We need to understand how to move the needle on these indicators so we do not come back next year and say, thanks God for Miami again, because that's a city where we're slightly doing better. So, for example, one way of reducing poverty is transportation. People in Tampa, they cannot afford a car to go to work, and that is causing the problem. Reducing that gap between minority, African American and white is really important. It makes perfect, not just the right thing to do, but it makes perfect economic and business sense. When we reduce the gap, when we have a city where no one is left behind, minority, African American and others will buy houses, will go to grocery stores, department store, and they will consume, and that is really good for the economy in our city. I am very deeply concerned to see the shrinking of our middle class. Let me tell you, a healthy middle class is the foundation of a city that is healthy economically speaking. We need to work and understand, and this, as Councilman Carlson said it so nicely, we need to rethink our economic development. The jobs that we are attracting to our city are low-paying jobs. We need to look to attract companies who are actually employing people with higher wages so that we reduce that middle class. But this, I cannot tell you how happy, excited to see the amazing work of Councilman Carlson. This is the foundation, but it will be a big mistake to stop here. Now we have to find ways to move the needle on these indicators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Miranda, I see your hand, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've been very impressed by the report. Thanks to Councilman Carlson and the Dean of South Florida School and others that have participated, including Alexander Phillip, so forth and so on. I like to think out of the box like most of us do. And if we think we have it bad now in transportation, let me just throw a little monkey wrench in it to think out of the box. What's going to happen in 5 years to 10 years when 30 or 40% of the automobiles are electric? Where are you going to get the tax money for gasoline tax money? They're not going to buy gasoline. They're buying electric power. So I like to think of how we're going to solve that problem on transportation, which is not going to get any better. If I'm right on the estimation of automobiles being built in the electric factor, in fact, maybe later on to be hydrogen. So what I'm looking at is how do you supply the income needed not only for this city, but for this country in gasoline-powered engines when you're paying a certain amount of tax for traveling every time you buy a gallon of gas? How are you going to solve that problem? I like to solve the problems in the future, and I appreciate everything you've done. I know, and let me just say this, the violent crime per 100,000 in 2019, it wasn't just 2019. It was a combination of many, many mayors, starting back to Bill Poe in the 70s. They're the present mayor now that has brought this down. Many, many police chiefs and many, many mayors and council members and the population that helped sustain the crime rate to go down. Certainly, I'd like to know exactly, and I'm going to ask later on, possibly ask this administration, what businesses have moved, relocated here in Tampa in the last 10 years. We have to have all the facts and numbers. And I'm not challenging your numbers. I agree with your numbers. But what caused the numbers? Who moved into Tampa and why? And there's 1,000 people a day or so moving into the state of Florida. From what I understand, the preponderance of them come from New York and the New England states. And I would imagine that's because of the cold weather and high taxes. But I like the problem is a lot more complex that's been stated, because the problem's got to look not only where we're at today, where we at yesterday, but more importantly, where we're going in the future. And you have to understand that taxation is one thing, but how do you get the money when the invention of different things is happening in the environment to produce and help save the environment that we have in solar that produces electricity? Are you going to have less electric power and less money's coming into the city because the city's going to be much more into solar than it is now? I don't have an answer for that. And I count on you, ladies and gentlemen, that have the ability to do those, factoring in to do that for us or help us. So those are the questions that I'm posing, and I hope that you don't break up just because of one report. I need a report for the future, what's happening tomorrow and how we're going to attain this. I need a road work and a map to get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Do you want Alex to say something?
Yes, sir.
If
Go
I could
ahead.
also talk a little.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Alex. I used to be an intern actually for Joseph Citro.
Good Morgan.
Well, I helped him. I helped create this presentation. Also, update the numbers, make it a little look a little better. Also, I'm an economics graduate student, so this is totally up my alley. And these numbers are just the beginning because they're just averages. They're basically the raw data. If you know any economic papers, usually they're the first thing, and then you do statistics, you do all this analysis. But what's nice about these raw numbers is you can't lie with them. Like if you can hear you lie with statistics, that's usually when you flip some things, but those are the raw numbers. So they basically tell a story, but they don't tell you the cause. So that's why they're like the first step. But it's still good to see them because, like I said, there's no subjectivity in these numbers because it's the census data. We use the 5-year estimates, the ones that come out the latest, to really get the best, actual results of what's going on. And yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could just thank Dr. Lemium and his colleagues. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Councilmember Citro, for allowing me to work with Alex last year. He's great.
We have a difference of opinion on that, but you're welcome.
But the mayor will be making her announcement in about an hour or a half hour, and Dr. Lemium will be there. This is just one step in a long process. The next thing, as we said, is we need to sit down with USF and really develop the predictive analytics and develop that plan that Councilmember Miranda asked for. The mayor or Carol Post and her staff will be coming back before us to present the results of the Economic Advisory Committee. And at that time, I think we can ask lots of questions. That's just the community feedback on the numbers and what we should do. And then we need to get the experts' advice on what the plan should be going forward. So the last thing I'll say is you all allowed me to present this a year ago. You're allowing me to present it today. You all enabled the Economic Advisory Committee. This is not my work. This is the work of City Council. City Council does so many things in so many ways, and I just want to thank all of my colleagues for allowing this to happen. And thanks to AV for setting this up today. Take it.
Councilman Dingfeld.
And since Alex was previously one of ours, I have to tease him and tell him he needs to make his bed before he joins us next time. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. All right.